to A Well-Designed Business. My name is Luann Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hello. Thank you so much for joining me again for another episode of A Well-Designed Business, and super double treat because I know we recently had an episode that was our Design Biz Live, our continuing feature that has both Judith Neary and Corys Klassen in it. So we had this long break where they weren't with us, and now we've got two in a short period of time here. And if you listen to the first episode, then you understand the reason for the break, that each Judith and Corey experience a little shift. I shouldn't say little, pretty big shift in their businesses over the summer of 2018. And these were shifts that were shifts of emotion, of challenge, of testing them as business owners and entrepreneurs and as interior designers, and how to keep their feet and solid ground during this shift. And so we took all of that apart for Judith's episode a couple of weeks ago. Please be sure to go back and find that episode. You can watch it on YouTube at A Well-Designed Business. You can find it on my website, luannigara.com. And you could also find it in my Facebook group, Luann Nigara and Friends. Now, today, we're going to talk about what Corey went through in the summer of 2018. And Judith has affectionately called these what I did last summer. So, Corey, why don't you start us off with what your challenge was that you went through, and let us see if we can relate and feel like we've all probably been in your shoes. Maybe let's see what was your event.
Well, first I want to say thank you, Luann, for giving me the platform to be able to talk about this, because I know that there's someone else out there going through this or will go through something like what I went through.
Yeah.
And as always, it's a pleasure to be on this podcast with you, with Judith as well. So what I want to do is just really get to the meat. What I did last summer is I hit the ditch.
Okay.
Yeah. So that, all right. So now you got a visual. I'm in the ditch. But
it's got a scene from Criminal Minds.
Right? But the other part of it is the ditch was kind of slippery. I went skidding out the other side and started going up the other way. So as soon as I was in it, I came out of it. And there's been quite a lead up, and I was thinking about this, and I was thinking like, would I be having this conversation with you a year ago? Well, yeah, a year ago I was in a different ditch. So, and then I thought, well, would I be having this conversation with you 2 years ago? Oh yeah, different ditch altogether. So, I mean, I hit the ditch a couple times lately for different reasons.
Maybe we just need to get you more traction on your tires, so you
right?
can stay on the road.
Just get me a 4x4 or something. So, aside from the previous, if you were to rewind 2 years ago it was an emergency surgery, blah, blah, blah. Coming out of that. And then if you were around a year ago, it was a personal situation where I had to separate from my partner of 18 years. So, yeah, a lot of stuff happened, and you think that you have the resolution and you have the team in place and you got the business going, but at the end of it, going through those parts and pieces, you're already kind of fragile. So I came into 2018 going, yeah, gung ho, I can do this. I got it. And, had a great office. I had a team. I had things seemed to be going well. And that's really what it comes down to, is that not everything that you see is what it seems. So Luann, you and I had a conversation probably in June of this year where I was like, kind of falling apart here.
Right.
What's, and
This
what
is
was
for
falling?
clarification, not on air conversations.
No.
You and I. Yep.
It was a Luann and Corey moment where I needed to either get a pat on the back or a kick in the pants, or I don't even really know what it was.
It was a tow truck to get you out of the ditch.
Yeah.
Yeah, stuck in there in my, anyway. So I went through this experience of business shift. And because I had already been shifting personally, financially, medically, and now this business shift happened, I was like, oh, of course it's going to happen. So I didn't come at this from an angle of woe is me, and that's not what this is about at all.
Right.
Not at all. I mean, I did a 360 and then I did another 180, as Judith and I were talking about. And to be truthful, there are big world problems out there already, and this problem is kind of small in comparison to the other big world problems. There's wildfires in Alberta and in California. There's tornadoes. There's earthquakes. Blah blah blah. All these things are happening, but what happened was I was left with a situation where I had a team of 3. And then I had a team of me. Boom. It was almost overnight. And these things happen. It's business, right? For whatever reason, because those reasons really aren't what's important. But me sitting there as the business owner, I was, whoa, how am I going to do this? Because my business plan, my strategic business plan says one thing. And what's happening right now is a totally opposite effect. And it threw me for a bit of a conundrum because I didn't know where I wanted to go at that moment. Because I look at it now as life giving me a gift. All these little situations, great, it's a gift, and I need to listen to that voice, that instinct, and I need to trust it. So what I have done is I have scaled my business still. So I've shifted certain parts and pieces of my services. I've dropped off certain services so that I can manage my solo-ness again.
Right.
Then I took the current clients that I had, and I had to kind of still manage them. I'm still working with them. They're still around, and they're still the same clients that I had 8 months ago as I do now, because projects do take a long time sometimes. And in the middle of all of that, I had to handle supplier issues. I had to handle taking on a project that I didn't design, but it was my business that designed it. I had to look at my lease, my commercial lease, and get presented with an increase and go, is this extra $800 a month kind of worth it? Or do I want to renavigate here? So essentially, there I am sitting in my office alone, which normally had 4 people in it. There I was sitting in it alone and just in silence and going, where do I want to go? What do I want to do here? And what I discovered was something that initially led me to have my own business in the first place was that I loved the personal face-to-face interaction with my clients. I loved being to be able to lead them to a solution without being the person behind them, pushing them or driving them both at the same time. I loved taking on their ideas and their creativity. So all these things could come back again, that I had to structure a process that couldn't afford those things anymore. Because we were a business, I had to pay salaries, I had to pay rent, I had to pay overhead. So now we're sitting in my temporary home office, as you can see from the background. It's different now. And I moved my home, I moved my office, all in 2 months.
Wow.
So there was a lot that happened in there. And while going through that, a couple of things crept up. I discovered some malaligned projects where I hadn't matched my values to the project itself. Which, if you listen to our last episode with Judith, where that was a parallel thing happening at the same time. She's going through something, I'm going through something, and it was really quite interesting. From there, I had to look at it and say, how do I pull myself out? How do I get out of the ditch? Because no one's going to do this work for me. Mm-mm. So I had to look at a few things, right? So I had to go into the cycle of purging. Friend, foe, acquaintance, right? I had to sort so much stuff because I was left with basically 2 properties that also I moved in with my boyfriend.
Add one more thing to it.
Right? So 2 properties merging into one, but 2 human beings with already stuff. So, and you have to keep going in business, and it still has to happen. So where I discovered something pretty important, and I think if someone can pick up one thing from what I'm going to say out of all of this, and you guys can ask me millions of questions, is my sole purpose of coming out of this is I got clear on my goal. It was messy. I'm not going to lie, it was messy, but I got clear on my goal, and I wanted to be happy. Didn't matter what the decision was. It just had to say, this is the decision, this is happiness, let's get there. Let's, decision on the left, happiness on the right. I had to get to the happy. And that was really profound for me because it's helped me navigate this crazy time. So with that, I'm going to pause for a second and take a breath.
All right. And let me dig into it a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you go back 3 years, you have the surgery, the medical crisis, you have a major breakup, 18 years. Okay. Yeah. And then the business crisis this past year. And then you meet a new person and you're in love with a new person, and it gets to the point that you want to move in together. So these are all major life events. There's no question. And what you're describing, if I'm reading it correctly, is that throughout all of this, that is the challenge of staying on an even keel for both yourself, your clients, and your employees. And some of the things fall through the cracks in big life transitions like this. And
oh yeah.
And so it surprises you, and it takes you by surprise, and it rocks you. And because of it, this summer, it comes to a head and you find yourself in this ditch.
In the ditch. And I'm looking, I was literally looking at this empty office, 4 computers, huge sample area, overhead, insurance, utilities. I'm like, wait, where is the happy?
Right.
Where is it?
Right. So when you said that the result of going through this and having the perspective of it, having pretty much behind you for a couple of months, 3, 4, 5 months at this point, that you got clear on your goals. So I understand the wanting the happy. But when you say you got clear on your goals, what were those goals that became clear for you, Corey?
The first goal that I obviously needed to get my kind of head wrapped around was my controllable contribution to myself. So I had to make sure that whatever decision or things that came into my life, they revolved around being able to have the outcome of happiness or joy, whatever you want to call it. That needed to be central to all the themes. The second part was financial. I needed to get my financial house in order fast, because essentially when you have that much overhead for one person, you are literally hemorrhaging money. Because I can't commit to new work because I have to commit to the work that I already have. So there was no new work coming in. I was actually turning away pretty much all the work because I knew that I had projects in line and I had to do them. then it became about strategizing for myself and getting my methods down, my processes, sticking to my guns of using a good client management software, still being able to manage my overhead with my software, and then I have to go through the process of liquidating these things or purging them. So the goal was, 1, happy. 2, how do I manage or staying in business? That's obviously the other goal. The third goal was financial. And then the fourth goal was about condensing or getting to the core of it. It happens to be part of my name. So getting to the meat of it, getting to the core of it, and really finding my zone of genius again. We're gonna keep saying it. We're gonna keep saying it, right? So those were really important to me when I wrote down the list. And yeah, I wrote a list. It happened to be on notes on my phone, but not pen and paper. But it was definitely a checklist where I was like, okay, for this equation to work, these are the parts that I think fall into place. And what I discovered is I had to become the project manager for my life. Scary.
Wow, very profound.
Yeah, scary. It was very scary to be in a situation where things seemingly were great. And you know what? And they still are. They're just different great.
Well, it's, so there's a couple of things in there that are significant. We all understand the value of a project manager on a big project. And you're so right. Your life is a big project. Somebody has to manage it. Can't just get up in the morning and go willy-nilly everyone which way or another without a plan, without a goal, without direction, because that's how it goes off the rails. It goes in the ditch. Exactly right, right? So the thing is, it seems to me too that is a big transition. You had a team of 3 people supporting you every single day, day in and day out, on all of the projects that you have been managing for however many years that is. And now simply to go forward and do business, I know you're a big process man. I know that you follow your processes, and I know that you use My Doma Studio for a lot of that. But the thing is, it's not just about do I use My Doma Studio or not. It's, well, usually in the last 3 years, these 3 people used it and I was up here. And now you need a new process for being the only person in the business. And it's obviously at one point in your career, you were the only person. But when you grow to a team of 3 people working with you, that's a very different work day than when, boom, all of a sudden, June 1st, you're 4 people, and August 1st, you're 1 person. And like to your point, the projects are in the pipeline. They're already in mid-project. You're not just starting over again. Even just a conversation of explaining to the clients where these other 3 people that they're used to interacting with, that's a level and a layer. How did you handle that?
So that's a great question, because the way that I went about that was like, okay, so this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Okay, so it's business. I'm a business. I just am.
You just leveled with them. It's truth.
Yep.
I had to make some adjustments. I had to revamp my what my team looks like, and now you're going to call me for every single thing.
For everything. And it wasn't without having job postings out there. So I had 3 or 4 different types of job postings out there. And it wasn't without going through the interviews either.
Oh, so in the process of all this, you're now also trying to find other people to replace. So you're working on every aspect of every project. You're having to manage conversations with clients that doesn't make them lose faith in you as a business person while telling them that this is going on. But you also have to have the brain power to be attracting and interviewing and possibly hiring the replacements.
That's correct.
Whoa.
And I probably about the 4th interview in, I was like, is there something I'm not getting?
Yes, the answer is yes. That's a whole nother podcast.
Right? Yeah. What was I not getting? Right? So I had to look at that, and you got to dig in and you got to own it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And looking at it going, okay, so I'm hunting for a replacement here, and I'm trying to replace this job here, and we're trying to replace that job there, and right, all of this attrition happened naturally. It just happened. It wasn't. It was, and I'm like, was it me as a boss? Right? Of course, I asked that question.
Sure.
Was it me as a boss? And I asked, is it me as a boss? No, it wasn't. I can't help but still think it is, or it was, but there's just a small amount of that, but not much, because I don't want to cast self-doubt. But I looked at the skills where I was at and the amount of work that I would need to bring somebody to where I needed them, based upon the 180 resumes and applications that I had in front of me. And I just went, that is so much work. That training and process would take time away from the projects I had.
The deadlines.
Right. I still had to meet them. So I looked at it and I said, okay, well, I could either, keep this train running and take anything that comes in and start feeding people, right? Paying their paychecks and paying the bills, or I can shift gears. And I chose to shift gears because I actually had the confidence in myself that I could actually do it. Okay. I knew that I could do it. I knew that I could be the bookkeeper. I knew that I could be the marketing manager. I knew I could be business development. I knew I could be my client manager. I knew I could be the interior designer, the product specifier. I knew that I could do it because I'd done it.
Right.
I had already done it. So I was confident in that.
So, like, if you're only listening and not watching, Judith just comes in with her, I need to say something here. So we're laughing because she does it so funny with this big sign. So,
here we go. And so,
and so,
I'm going to channel my inner Luann for a moment here. Corey,
Judith,
you mentioned what I'm observing in listening to you is that there is this tipping point to I'm going to use myself, sole proprietor, okay, versus how do you step from sole proprietor to design team, and then at what point I'm sorry, I have multiple thoughts streaming at the same time here. I'm too many Luanns in my head. Okay.
There's only one.
I know. But there's this tipping point that from small sole proprietor business to design team to design firm. And the challenge is, when you hit that tipping point, do you make the big leap and go design firm, big staff, or do you step back and go back to sole proprietor? Because that sweet spot of small design firm, 3 or 4 people, very hard to navigate that and sustain it in an active business environment when you're going through personal chaos at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right, you almost have to be so big that the crisis for your person can happen and other people can carry it, or you have to be solo where you just, send a SOS out to all your clients and say, I'm sorry, I'm off the rails for a month and we'll get back on next month. But that in between, where the 2 or 3 people that are there are valuable and they're important and they're probably very critical to the design process, but maybe none of them is actually the leader that can lead the team while you're in the ditch.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And I want to, and if I could say something to be absolutely clear, because I know that these former great stellar employees of mine listen to your podcast. Okay. It is not without trying, or not without having faith, or not without wanting them to stay on. It was just a change. It was just time to change.
And it's your prerogative as the business owner to do that change, especially when that change is based on self-preservation. and that
That's
change
right.
based on the quality of life that you want for yourself. And yes, we all have responsibility to our employees. There's no question. It's the contract that we have with them, that they work for us and we take care of them. But as I said in our podcast with Judith, previous to this one that aired a couple weeks ago, is it is a business though. And it's no less than the relationship with your client. You know, you're friends with the client, you like the client, you know when their kids' birthdays are, but it is a business relationship. And it's the same with our staff and our employees. We have a responsibility to them, but we're not their mama. Okay.
That's right.
It is a business relationship. And so with respect and with, deference to them, it is okay for you as the business owner to choose a new direction for your company and navigate that. And so I hear you that you respect them and like them and adore them. And it wasn't about them, by the way.
No, never. It was all about me. It's my name on the door, apparently.
Right.
We know that to be true.
Oh, thank you. I wear my crown proud.
Or your Spock ears, either one.
Oh, you can't see them under this headset, and there's a visual for everybody listening. So really,
but there's some, I just want to let's go this here. Let's just recap some of the trickier parts of this though, right? Because it sounds like maybe some of the employees made a choice to leave, okay? Because you said, was it me as a boss? So there was probably a combination of maybe, I have no idea. I don't want anybody to think I know the thing. I know what you know as you're hearing it, but maybe one or two decided to leave, and that made it so that there's no way you could have the third one there, because without the 1 and 2, we can't have enough business, like just the writing on the wall to be a solo, right? So there's that transition of employees, of having that conversation with somebody who's saying, you know, I'm going to leave, and then having the conversation with somebody else going, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. And then there's a conversation, I don't want to gloss over that. That conversation with your clients, I'm sure had to be difficult to have and had to be thought out on your part how to handle it, because let's be serious, for the client, it's all about them. And they might really, and it should be because they're paying you good money, right? But they might really, really respect and admire you and as a person, as a man. But when you want to come and say, hey, last week I had a team of 4 of us to manage your project, and this week it's a team of 1. Honestly, what client, even if they love and respect you, isn't going to go, what's that going to mean to my life? Like, does that mean my deadlines are going to be lost? Does that mean I'm not going to get a phone call? Does that mean? So you had to have a way to express the change in your firm that still kept a feeling of, you know, I still got this. I'm still going to be able to handle this for you. But here's the thing, while you are being shaken by the events that are happening. See, that's the thing. It's not like I won $1 million in the lottery and I'm going to change my business. And hi, Mrs. Client, let me tell you all about it. And I'm so happy, and I hope you're happy too. And if you're not, I don't care. It's like I'm in the ditch, but I need to stand up enough to explain to you how it's going to be different and not have you be concerned or worried that I can't handle it, when you were probably concerned and worried if you can handle it.
Oh, yeah, not gonna lie.
Right? That's the thing. That's the tough part.
Not gonna lie. And I think if I can get clear on what I did or how I processed it, was I had I realized, probably this gets a little bit touchy because it leans more on the personal side. So can I stand in my own space alone and do what I do? Yeah, probably could do that. Did I do it through my pre-adult life or my young adult life, and now I'm in my mid-40s? No, I hadn't. I had always had somebody behind me doing something. So, and then all of a sudden to not have that, and then going into a new thing and going, okay, there was a lot of conversation about me not wanting to transfer ownership of an issue onto somebody else, because you're developing new relationships with someone, and that gets really tricky. But at the core of it, I sat down with myself and I said, okay, I have a choice with how I'm going to go about this next. And I can either lie, right? Or
Never
I can
a good
conduct,
idea, but
never a good, right? Or I can conduct myself in the way that I have always conducted myself with my clients, and that is with honesty and transparency. So I'm not going to tell them they know that I'm their supplier for the products that we're purchasing. They know that there's a markup and a margin in there. They know that I'm a business,
right,
because I need to be sustainable.
right.
And when someone starts interfering with that, I've always had the rebuttal, like, well, this is the price we've sold it to you at, or this is the price that I can sell it at to you. I can certainly take a look at reselecting another item. So that's kind of the way that I approached it in the same aspect with truth and honesty, and transparency, where I was able to say, this happened, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere because this is my bread and butter. Like,
you hired
I need this
Klassen
job. Hi.
You can't fire yourself, Corey.
Right, exactly.
You can't fire yourself.
I can't fire Corey Klassen from Corey Klassen Interior Design.
Right.
So, but what I can do is I can say to a client, look, this happened. This is how I'm going to manage it. But if you see something that you don't feel comfortable with, just holler. Just say something. Was that a so?
No, it's an
She's got another sign up, folks.
I'm gonna channel my inner Luann here for a moment. Okay.
Again.
I want to go back.
Do this without me pretty soon.
Yep. In fact, it was so hard to get on your calendar. Corey and I thought, well, let's just record the podcast.
Send it to her.
and one of us will pretend to be Luann. Like Luann would say this here. And we were going to intersperse you. We were going to get a cutout of your head, okay, and hold it up.
But to be clear, the only reason why it took a little bit longer for us to get on the podcast again was because these changes happened.
Well, I have to say, the beginning was you guys. The last couple of months was me. But you were like, you had appointments. You're like, one of us needs to cancel. I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. And then I'm like, wait, what's with these two? And then we come to find out what was going on. But anyway, you had an Judith.
Yes. Now I forgot. But I want to go back to channeling my inner Luann here for a second. Corey, you mentioned it, and Luann, you've alluded to it in different topics, but when you are a small business firm or a sole proprietor, similar to myself or to Corey, and even Luann, for you with your staff, is in a management structure or in an environment where you have, please don't get me wrong, good Indians and a couple of chiefs. In other words, you have leaders and you have support staff, workers. Mm-hmm. What the challenge is when the leader, because you have to sustain that leadership capacity, you have to sustain the vision, you have to sustain the ethic, the environment, and revitalize it. And as the leader, when your capacity to lead or your passion to lead is diminished, if you don't have a staff that steps up and says, we're going to help you out, you're screwed.
Right.
Okay. The vision, the ethic, the inspiration, the reason for showing up to work becomes diminished, and you lose that enthusiasm for the work, and you lose the work ethic as a result of losing the enthusiasm. And so that's very hard to be in a leadership position and sustain individuals around you when you personally hit the ditch.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's just spill the tea for a second here.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to tell you something. Did I, in the last, let's say 2 years, in the last 2 years, did I sit down at home with a drink in my hand and say, I don't want to do this anymore? Yes.
Whoa.
Yes. And then I went, well, wait a minute. Yeah, I do. Because I love this job. I love what I do. I love this career. I love learning. I love I love so many aspects of solving complex problems for someone's lifestyle that is actually, it was actually inspiring me to have that low and then go right up to the high, probably within 2 minutes. Like, well, wait a second. Yeah, I do. So, all right, my name's on the door. Great. My name's, well, it's not on a door anymore.
You can put it on your bedroom door.
Right?
Mr. Klassen's office this way.
Oh, so funny. But it will be, so shifting, if I shift gear, think about it. Okay, do I have an office? Yes, I have an office. You're looking at the temporary structure behind me. Next month, will there be a different office? No. Will there be a different office mid-spring? Yes. So I have a plan to get there. Will it be a standalone office away from my home? No, because it's going to be me. It might be one other person, and I'm reevaluating what works for me. So I looked at my psychographics for me, and I've aligned them now to somebody I want to hire or to consult for me as their own independent business. And I've also looked at who I am and what I want to do with this little engine that could. So I have no question about my confidence about the future. There's no question about it. Did I? Yeah, for sure. Right. For sure. But I don't question it because I had a business plan. I just need to rewrite it.
Right. And you have the skills. It's clear. I have a question for you. So when you talked about that moment where you sit at your apartment by yourself over the last 2 years and you've had that moment where like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then you immediately followed in with, wait a minute, but I love being a designer and I love solving problems. Are we saying that the end of this journey of this, what I did last summer and what rocked you this past summer, are we saying that you have gained clarity on the fact that what was unhappy for you was leading a bigger team and having a bigger machine that had the studio, that had the rent, that had the insurance, that had the payroll, and that because of the life circumstances and everything that happened, and when you had your come to Jesus moment and you had to let all that go, that in your analyzation of it, you've realized that this is the yes part of that I don't want to do this. It's like what you really want is to be a solo, and you've found your joy in being the solo again, and possibly having a bookkeeper or whatever, junior assistant or something that's a contracted person. Is that what you mean?
I think in a roundabout way, yes. Okay. So yeah, sitting there banging my head against a brick wall, well, I'm only hurting myself, right? It's a brick wall.
Right.
Big deal. It doesn't hurt. I do. So as soon as I got around that and I could say, all right, so stop doing that and start looking at ways to find solutions, because that's what we are as interior design professionals. We're solution finders. Mm-hmm. We're also product adapters, and we apply other solutions to the design. So we need to do the same thing sometimes to our life. And So,
Judith,
to help Corey complete his thought, or to give him a moment to complete his thought process, when Corey has this moment of like, I just don't want to do this anymore, all right, I think I would just say we've all had it. I mean, you have to admit, and my last summer moment from the previous podcast when we talked about it was, a series of interesting clients that created this of reassessment that I had to do of myself. And again, I'm sorry, Corey, this podcast I know is more about you sharing, but I just wanted to say this is that I'm like Corey, I'm like, I could be done with this and go do something else. And when you get to that point, I had to sit down and think about, well, why do I keep doing this? No one is going to remember me for the fabulous black and white kitchen with red accents that I designed. Okay. I'm sorry. No one's going to remember me for the white kitchen. What they are going to remember or value is the relationship I build with them and how I feel about it. And what, for me, I realized, like Corey to find his zone of genius and to own his zone is you find the part about the business that is rewarding to you and makes you feel good. Okay. And we sometimes, when like Corey hits the ditch with all these things, and same thing for me, and I know for you, Luann, as well, that when we hit the ditch and we're like, why the hell am I doing this? And how do I find value in it again? You have to sit down and list the things that you like about it. You know, what are the things that are important to you, and how do you feel at the end?
And that's exactly it. I mean, we could talk about my awards and stuff like that. We can talk about my professional accomplishments forever, and that's all great. But very simply, looking at it, going, can I now, knowing what I know now, like hindsight's 20/20, right? Every single time. If knowing what I know now, can I be without those awards? Yes, absolutely. I didn't need them. They're nice. I'm not going to discount them. I worked hard for them. They're definitely a statement as to the milestones in my career. But do they propel me forward? They might give me that security, knowing that it's the validation. But did the big office do that for me? Maybe for a little bit. Did the team do that for me? Well, I was definitely starry-eyed about it. I'm not gonna lie. I thought, oh, this is fantastic. Look at me. Oh, this is so fun. No, at the end of the day, it's still me.
Right.
I love solving problems. I love technical issues as far as mechanical goes. I love kitchens and bathrooms. I love doing styling. So I was able to like sit down and go, okay, let's list the things I love. Forget the things I don't love. That doesn't matter. I listed the things that I loved. Now I want to build around that.
And you had gotten yourself to a point with having 3 people on staff that you were doing very few of the things that you love about the design career at that point. You were probably very disconnected from the things that you loved. Yes.
Exactly. It was more about being the business manager and the business developer and the marketing person and the key front salesperson than it was about doing the jobs.
Right.
Which I'm sure everyone has their different way of doing things. And hey, if that's what you love to do, go do it.
Right.
If you want a team underneath you, go do it.
Absolutely. But the idea here and the concept here is that you can, I guess the message that I would love to make sure that comes out of this is that, number one, we all go through anything, something, everything, whatever it is, clients that are difficult for a myriad of reasons, life changes, crisis, physical health, emotional, everything. And when we go through those things, that is a forced moment and should be used as a moment for reflection and evaluation and recalculating, like recalculate, right? But the thing is, and so the thing is, the message of the podcast today is the combination of you're not alone, that the design world is not all rainbows and unicorns for everybody, as Judith tells us, that each of us have real lives that are complicated and messy and, yicky sometimes. The second message is that if you do end up in a ditch, is to not just climb out and keep repeating the same things that got you in the ditch, is to do as Corey did and really sit and say, what do I love? What do I not love? What, and really, to your point better, what do I love? Just the focus on what is it about this business and being in this career that I love. And if there's enough things in that list to build a business and a career around, go ahead. But guess what? Somebody's ditch moment might be like, there's not a whole lot left I love here. It doesn't turn me on anymore, right? And that's okay too, okay? And then the third thing that I would love to get somebody to think about is you don't have to have a crisis moment to have this revelation about yourself if you are scheduling and intentionally always evaluating your business, yourself, your priorities. That should be part of, I mean, Vin and I told you in the last episode about the Friday nights on the bar stool. You know, a lot of those Friday nights are those types of things. This is, you know, look at how that's going this way, and this is a direction. Do we want that? Now that's an informal way, but it's happening. The thing about what I recognize is because we're partners in business and in life, we make time and have time for those conversations. When you are a solo, or you are the principal of a firm of 3 people or 10 people, and you don't have a business partner, you see, you lose that opportunity for built-in evaluation of, are we on track? Am I on the right train? Right? And so you had to get to crisis before you said, am I on the right train? What does my train look like? And so as a solo, you need to figure out who does that with you, for you. How does it happen? Right? You can't just wait for a crisis to, go like Moonstruck, snap out of it, right? You gotta build it in.
Yes.
Right?
Snap out of it.
Snap out of it. You know, right? I mean,
everybody needs a little share moment. But if I were to sit here and before I entered into these types of situations over the last 2 years, and I would hear that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's very good. That's very good information.
So
I'll start
sweet.
scheduling that in. But the fact of the matter is, it's just life. Things happen.
But you can navigate it. You can project manage your life. That's my thing. You can navigate it. And it could be that you just every quarter spend a spa day, and you do it. If you don't have a business partner, you do it by yourself, and you disconnect from the phone, and you disconnect from all your clients, and you just sit and say, what do I love about this? And then the second question, after you answer that list, am I doing the things I love about this? Because if you do that even once a quarter, if you do it, if the first quarter it's like, hey, I love these 5 things, guess what? I'm on doing all 5 of them. Awesome. Yay. Gold star. Go back to work. Second quarter, do it again. Third quarter. What might take 2 years before you're like, I'm not doing anything I love about this business anymore. Or I don't have anything I love about this business anymore, because then you avoid the crisis.
There's a third question. There's a third question you need to add to that list is, what am I willing to let go of?
Right. What will I do and what I won't do? What will I do and what I won't do?
Yeah, and we talk about that all the time, Judith and I. What will you do? What won't I do? And I was clear on that before, but I had to go back. Mm-hmm. And I went back about 3 or 4 times. Yeah, and it was never. It's this road or whatever roller coaster that we're on. It does move, and if you're not going to project manage your life, then how are you going to project manage your business?
Right.
And you got to build. Sure, building doesn't mean next level, because when you're a master at what you do already, what's the next level? Well, the next level is finding, for me, it's going back and say, these are the things I love to do. I'm going to build my business around that because that's where my joy is.
Right.
That's where I'm happy.
Right.
So that's what I'm doing.
Right.
And I've already did it, but.
Well, and the other thing that I want to point out is that, to leave the whole emotional side of the conversation for just a moment and apply some practical analysis to it also, is that I know you, Corey. I've learned to come to know you in the last couple of years, and I've learned through your language and the way that you have talked about your firm and your projects that you actually do have a very clear, enunciated process for managing your client projects. And when you say, you know what, if I'm going to be alone, and can I be the client, can I be the project manager? Can I be the marketer? Can I be the business development person? Can I do all these things? I absolutely know that you can, and you have been, and you are going to be those things for your business. But the reality is that not many people are capable of doing all of those things. And so it is a good lesson to learn to, what I always say is, you need to know enough of, if you're going to hire it out, right? You need to know enough about it yourself. You don't have to have it to expert level. You don't have to be, it doesn't have to be your genius zone, but you do have to know enough before you grow on what you do so that you can manage it. I've had many, many stories of business owners in and out of the industry tell me how their bookkeeper has stolen from them. I mean, legit, 5-figure amounts. We had Andrea Schumacher on the show a couple of years ago. At the end of a year, her accountant said, you owe $68,000 or something like that. And she was like, whoa. And she was very transparent about sharing that. And that it comes from, oh, okay, I'll let that person do that and not oversee. And you all know that is not my superpower. But if I did not have the bin man to run the business end of it, you can be darn sure that as boring and as gross and as obnoxious as looking at numbers is, I would be doing at least every 2 weeks with my business bookkeeper. Okay, tell me what we're doing. And she would, or he would not have the keys to the castle, right? Mm-hmm. It would be my bank account, my names, I make the deposits, right? So my point in this is that your journey and going from a team to a solo is an emotional journey. It's a gift for you to share it with us that you've done it and you've been transparent with us that it's happened. But the other reason that you are on your feet is because you are capable of these other duties. You have learned them, you have done them, and your business has a system for running. It's going to change now because one person is going to do it, but you have systems. It's not like, I have no idea how to do this because those people over there used to do it. Right?
That's absolutely right. And I've always thought that, I've always tried to make that clear distinction with myself between fear and nervousness. To me, fear is like, okay, whoa, step back, learn what you need to learn, then move ahead. Nervousness is actually excitement.
Right.
So
it's scary, but I got this.
Yeah. Have I been afraid this in the last 2 years? Not terribly. I mean, there might have been some personal moments on the personal side where I was like, whoa, how am I going to, right? But that made me stop, take stock, and write down the things that I wanted, my list of 100 things, and start checking them off. And when I look at something and I get nervous, now I recognize that's actually a good thing. So yes, absolutely. If we can learn the difference between those two things first, and then we start applying what you're talking about, Luann, I think that is ever more inspiring for everybody who's listening to really propel themselves and start setting themselves up by sitting down and don't book meetings on Fridays, right? Those are your days because it's a slow day anyway. Nobody wants to meet on a Friday, right? Those are your days to go through your accounting, make sure that you got that done, go through your weekly tasks, set yourself up for next week, and then start envisioning how you want to look in a month, 3 months, a year from now. And I do that on Fridays. That's my job.
That's great. I love it because the fact of the matter is, we're all going to have a moment where we find ourselves in the ditch. And if the business is well positioned within its systems and processes, whether you are one person or you are 5 people or you are 15 people, it is a much easier task. It might be very difficult to personally, mentally, emotionally get yourself out of a ditch, but it will be much easier to pull that business back out of the ditch because that's, that has a thing that has set setups and rules. And, I mean, my office at WindowWorks, I must say it, oh my goodness, like 3 times a week. I'm like, you cannot be the only person here that knows that. Like I say to them all the time, if you won the $60 million lottery tomorrow and you never came back, how am I going to know that? Because so often an answer when I say, oh, what is happening with this? And they'll be like, oh, let me find out. I'm like, well, did we get a response from this designer or that designer? Oh, let me check the emails. And my brain explodes. I'm like, no, see, it can't be in the email. The information from the email has to come to the order. There is a system. There is a process. I said, because if you win the $5 million lottery and you don't come in tomorrow, I'm not searching through 6 months of emails to find this answer. I have a system. The system is this.
Okay, back up.
I know. But
don't piss off Luann.
I know. It's just, but my thing is, it's like when a mistake happens in our business because there's no system for it, well, that's the first, we need a system for this. But when mistakes happen, because we didn't follow the system, that's so much harder to be happy about. But
I agree. And there's a thing about mistakes that I like to impart on people who ask me for advice, because that's what these podcasts do. Somehow these random emails show up.
yes, of course, that's the truth, right?
Yeah, and there are mistakes, and there will be mistakes. We're humans.
Yep.
It's the first thing that's going to happen. There's just going to be mistakes.
Yep.
Step number 1, own it. And owning it doesn't mean, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Owning it means, I'm sorry this happened. This is what I'm doing to fix it.
Right.
So yeah, you got to move quick. You just have to move quick on owning your mistake. If that means I'm sorry this happened, I don't have the answer today, I'm going to call you back tomorrow.
Right.
That's what ownership is. Then what happens is you're automatically taking on accountability. So you're now owning that mistake, so now you're accountable for it, so you're accountable for the outcome. You've put in steps and measurements and goalposts and things in place. And this is something that I talk about all the time. I can't tell you how many times I talk about this with everybody. Mistakes are your education.
Right.
They're your university.
That's how you learn.
Owning the mistake is your A+.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you're going to get that A+, that 4.0 GPA. That's how you're going to get there.
That's right.
The accountability is your PhD.
Right. I know. I love it. I mean, because in a sense, in a very real sense, that's what both of you have done with this episode with Corey and the previous episode with Judith, is that you have had a period of your business life that was extremely challenging, that was emotional and financial and all types of repercussions through it. But instead of just saying, oh, the whole world is against me, and, the economy and the world and the business and people and clients, you sat back, you evaluated, you looked at it, and you said, what happened? How did that happen? Why did that happen? Could I have done something differently? Did I learn something that I will do differently in the future? And that is the owning of the mistake. It's like you said, is to acknowledge it and accept the responsibility for it, but to find how it happened so that you don't repeat it, and then to establish the accountability for making sure that it'll go forward and you can correct it and it will be accountable. So I think it's amazing what you guys have done, because we have spent 3 years on this podcast talking about the rainbows and unicorns. I mean, and that's not to say, just off the top of my head, I know that Corey Damon Jenkins, he shared some very, come to Jesus moments on his podcast. Of course, I just mentioned Andrea Schumacher. There have been quite a few designers that have shared the challenges that they have faced as business people, but my point is not to the point of a whole podcast to say, this is really a crazy lunatic summer that I've had, and I hope that somebody would learn from it if I would have the, the guts and the courage to share it with people. So hats off to you guys, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And
thank you for the therapy.
Yeah. Right. This is definitely, I used to be a business analyst. I'm going to go down a road here. I used to be a business analyst, and we used to do these things called postmortems.
Oh yeah, I call it autopsies. We have to do the autopsy of every project. Yep.
You look back and you're like, okay, these were the failures. These are the successes. Okay, great. Let's apply those successes. Let's fix the failures.
Right. Let's try and do that again. Let's try and leave those things behind, do these things.
Right.
But and it's funny because you guys see the kind of personality I'm like, I dig into everything and I have to take it apart and blah, 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 like this. Right. And when we do have a mistake, I know that in my effort to identify how the mistake happened, that I can be like, but this and how about that? And what, and then of course, if you come back with me, well, it was because of this. If that's not logical, then I go, no, because this should have, created that check or that balance. And so it's the combination of the tenacity of my personality, but also the actual goal of owning the mistake is in the owning of it is the lesson in it. And if we can't pick it apart till we get to the lesson, then what I say to them is if you can't allow us as a team to get all the way to how this happened, then we can't expect to avoid it the other time. So it's not about getting to blame. It's not about, oh, I want to ask you 9,000 questions so I can figure out every single place that you made a mistake and you created this. It's about so that we can figure out, well, is there a way we can tweak the system? Is there a way that we can tweak this in order for it to not happen again? And so for you guys to come here and to talk about these challenges that you had this summer so that maybe somebody else can, take a little stock and say, are they reaching the point that their bucket is half full, almost full? They need to do a recalculation. Are they finding themselves? Are they in the ditch? And I would say the other huge, sentence of this podcast, this episode, was that I know that when you said, in the last 2 years, have I ever sat there at my home at the end of the night, at the end of the day, with a drink in my hand and said, do I want to do this anymore? And the answer was no. And I know that you followed right up, but wait a minute, I love it. And I also know that you both said, we all have that, right? But the reality is that we shouldn't be experiencing that often if we really are running our business the way we want to. Because I have to say, I have not had that moment in a really long time. And I'm talking decades long. Now that doesn't mean I don't have scary moments. That doesn't mean I don't have trying moments. It doesn't mean I don't have come to Jesus days like, holy moly, what is this about? But that true, I don't want to do this anymore. That only enters when you're actually engaging in activities that you don't want to do anymore. And you're ignoring the inner voice that is saying, change this business. It's yours. You have the power to change it. So that's the thing. If you're experiencing out there,
and show.
Right. And show. And come. And get the cane. Get her out of here. Oh my goodness. Right. All right. Well, much love on both of you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I know that, like you started by saying, somebody out there is going to find themselves in this message. So thank you both for being so open.
Well, thank you for the teachable moments and for sharing the teachable moments. And hopefully the listeners out there will provide some dialogue. Love to know how they got out of the ditch. Or how do they know they're headed into the ditch? What are those markers? And like you said, you haven't had that in many, many, many years. And so thank you very much for letting us have this conversation with you and the 3,000 to 5,000 to 20,000 listeners that are out there.
And Luann, thank you for when I was in the ditch. Thank you for answering the phone.
Yeah. Are you kidding me? Sure. No, I was happy to be there and happy to help you and happy to, just be the if that this for you. You know what I mean? Okay, absolutely. What about this? What about that? What about this? Absolutely. So, and I have to say, and as long as you brought that up, I'm going to say what's really amazing, Corey, is that we did have a heart-to-heart conversation, and I did hit you with some things that I wanted you to do in order to gain some clarity. And I have to say that so many people don't do it. You did it. You literally messaged me 2 days, 5 days, a week later, and you said this, I did this, I did this, I did this. And you had, 180-degree turnarounds based on the things that we brainstormed together that you could do to get out of that ditch, right? Yep. And I remember thinking so many people would have said, oh, that was 4 ideas that won't work for me. Never mind. I'm just going to stay here in the ditch. That's a testament to you, because I know when I hit you with some of those things, you were like, I don't know. And I was like, dude, what choices do you have here? You have nothing to lose. Go do it.
That's exactly, yeah. That was where I think it was actually only 3 days.
Yeah. I mean, I remember thinking, whoa, that's amazing. Yeah. I remember being so happy for you. And it was just one more way that it added to my admiration for you, because it's not a deficit on our part to have a crisis in our business. It's not a deficit on our part to be in crisis, but it is a deficit on our part not to take action and to seek advice and to take action on advice that we're given. That's the deficit. And you just knocked it out of the park. So I was so happy for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Then, but here's the hook. We're going.
Right? How many long goodbyes?
All righty. So listen to me, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Like I said in the beginning, you will be able to find this on a Well-Designed Business YouTube channel. I'm also going to put it in the Luann Nigara and Friends private Facebook group. You do have to ask to join it. You do have to be an interior designer to join it. So if you're interested in doing that, go ahead over there. And then, because the reason that we're going to do that, we're going to put this one in there is because if you do want to ask Judith and Corey some questions, if you do want to share some things, most of the time I encourage you to interact with me on the Facebook post or the Instagram post for the episode. But I understand that this is a little bit closer to the bone and might be a little bit more emotional for many people. And that's not everybody's business. Instagram is all unicorns and rainbows. Let's be serious, right? Okay. So, but there is safety in the group, and we will respect you and your privacy and your concerns and your questions if you have them. So please join us over there. Alrighty, guys, what are you going to do? What's your decision going to be? How are you going to be excellent? Go do it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at luannnigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.